The key takeaway is that search is inherently changed, and the content, that broad content we used to write, is not going to work anymore. Understanding your ICP, going to that second level of questions, that next level, and going deeper of what isn't being answered in the AI overviews by GPT, that's going to be the key to your success. I'm Casie Gillette, and this is SEO in 2026.
Casie, what's your number one SEO tip for 2026?
My number one tip is get hyper specific about what your ICP actually needs. And what that means is that this era of generic SEO and SEO content is over, right? AI overviews, they already own those answers. They already own those broad surface level questions. And the only way to really stand out is to understand what your customers want, right? Who is your target audience? What do they want? What do they struggle with? What's missing from the AI summaries? And what are the insights that they can't get anywhere else?
So obviously you mean ideal customer profile there. Why is that terminology your preferred terminology over something else?
You know, it's so funny. I think it's just because the last couple companies I've worked for, we use that. But I do like it because we talked about, for years you heard about personas, then your target audience, whatever it might be. It's all kind of the same thing, but I do love the idea of this is my ideal customer, right? This is who they are. This is what they want. This is what they're asking. I think when you really break it down, that's who you want to be targeting. That's who you're writing for. And understanding that is just so important. Plus, I'm lazy, so I like an acronym.
I love people that talk about things in the singular, your ideal customer. It's like great podcasters talking about hello listener instead of hello listeners, because it makes it feel as if you're actually talking to someone directly instead of you could be talking to everyone else and they're probably not talking to me, so maybe I won't pay attention. But so why do you say customer? Do you say customer because there's only one ideal customer that you pinpoint?
No, I don't think so. I mean, that's who's buying from you, right? And there might be multiple customers in the sense of, okay, I'll use our company as an example. So we have a community for legal in-house general counsel. But even though our customer is, general counsel in-house, they might be for a tech company or maybe a public company, or it might be a venture fund. At the end of the day, they have all of these same things in common. The things that are important to them is pretty much what's important to everybody. So they are almost a customer. It's a customer, right? We're just kind of putting it all together. When you think about personas, right? People used to make these, I remember these slide decks that my clients would pay tens of thousands of dollars to have built. And it was like, this is Joe and Joe likes this. Look, what are they looking for? What are their needs? What is it that they want? What do they need to know? Yeah, I like it. I think it's our customer.
And how do you go about establishing that? Is it a case of looking at your data? Is it a case of talking to people, asking people, and what kind of information do you actually try and include on that ideal customer profile?
Yeah, I mean, look, when we go back to what SEO did, right, or is, at the heart of SEO, I think back to when I started 20 years ago. What were we doing? Keyword research, right? And then that evolved into, okay, I'm also now doing content research. And now maybe I'm talking to my sales team and I'm talking to my support team. And maybe I'm even talking to some of our customers to get a sense of what they want. That hasn't changed, and I think even now, we actually have more data at our disposal. I just did an analysis where I took all of our customers, I put it into a spreadsheet. And I asked, it had their titles, right? It had how long they've been a member. It had the types of companies they were at. And, I just asked Gemini within Google spreadsheets, what are the common factors here, right? What are the commonalities between these people? What are some things they might be interested in? All of that stuff is just at our disposal now, which is really fantastic. But at the end of the day, we go back to it. And when we're thinking about SEO and we're thinking about content, and we're thinking about what are they searching for, that hasn't changed, right? We're still looking for the same things. We're going to look to see what's showing up on search. We're going to look to see what's showing up, on GPT. We're going to look, what are the forums? Like, I still believe that, and I talk about that in the sense of like, I consider Reddit like a forum, right? Like, we're looking to see what are people talking about and what do they care about. And if you know who those people are, you can get a sense of what they actually care about.
So why does an SEO need to know this information, and how should an SEO use this information?
I mean, that's the importance of this whole thing, is that like the search landscape, like I will say, I've said this, I think I said it last year on this podcast, that I have never seen a bigger change in search in my time, right? In the 20 years I've been doing this. I truly believe that like the search landscape has fundamentally changed, right? With the advent of AI, with Google really focused on that, with GPT, with Reddit, with people just spending time elsewhere, right? You hear people say like the younger generation, they don't go to Google necessarily. And so this is just such a huge shift in the way that we do SEO has had to change as well. And so I really think like my background was always content marketing, right? So creating the content that's going to show up in search, that's going to get people interested, that's going to drive them to our site. Well, that broad catch-all content that once pulled in traffic, that's not working anymore because we now have the AI overviews answering that. So anything that is more generic that we used to rely on for visibility, it just doesn't have the same impact, right? I think that's clear to anyone who has a website who had done anything of that nature. And so why I think this understanding your ICP and understanding their needs and being specific is that we can't compete at that surface level anymore. You have to own the specific conversations they're having, right? So we have to know, like, AI can't replicate this, right? That they can't just fully replace it. So I just really believe that like in 2026, like the winners, they're going to be the people who go deeper, right? And deliver content that's tailored, that's driven by expertise, that's driven by data, and can't just be generalized. So like you think about like, what is that second layer of content? What is that second layer of questions? If you have research, that can't be replicated. If you have answers to specific things about your product or about your industry that can't be replicated, I just think that is so important. We can't just create that generic content anymore.
Does keywords volume matter anymore?
Oh, I have no idea, David. I was just talking to our SEO and I was saying, like, I just saw a stat that was like 60% of searches don't go to the website anymore, right? Like no one ever clicks from them. So to me, it's almost more, what are the opportunities, right? You still need to understand the keywords, but you also need to understand like, where are they searching for these things? So your strategy might not just be like, okay, I need content for Google, but like, how do I create content for these other platforms as well? Some of the LLMs might be pulling from, so I don't know if volume matters. I mean, I think there's always a sense it gives you that baseline. I've always sort of taken keyword volume with a grain of salt, to be very candid. Like it shows me that people are looking for it, but does it always necessarily mean that my audience is looking for it? Not always. So maybe.
It was interesting that you said you've got to create content for Google and you've got to create content for other platforms as well. Does that mean you're talking about creating different bits of content for different platforms, or do you try and serve each platform from the same piece of content?
Well, I think just like, right, like, I've always been a big fan of building something that you can utilize and repurpose in different places. And like, here's an example. So we put out like this compensation survey every year. It's a pretty big deal. We only share it with our members for the most part, but we do also include snapshots of it that can be used in different places, right? So like we have a blog about it that might give like some more general statistics that could be picked up in search. We built like a document for LinkedIn, like we use it for LinkedIn ads, we use it for our general LinkedIn profile. There are different pieces of it that we can use. But it's also understanding what matters to those people in those places. So that's always been the thing, right? Like people in different places want different things.
You mentioned that 60% or round about 60% of the visibility of a piece of content or a result in a SERP doesn't get a click. How do you measure success nowadays because of that?
Such a good question. The way that we kind of look at it is it's an ongoing process. So, I mean, we've seen search traffic decrease, right? I mean, I think pretty much everyone has seen the organic search traffic decrease. But if you're putting out good content and you're putting out things that are interesting, what does that engagement look like, right? If you're putting out good content, how is that impacting your pipeline? Right? Are you getting more leads? Are you getting more customers? Are you getting people to your things? And again, I do think there's still something to like your keyword visibility. Like, are you showing up for those specific, like intent rich queries that are tied to those things your customers are talking about? So I still think there's ways. I mean, we're starting to look at, I know the person who runs our digital, she has created reports now even to show, are we generating visibility and are we generating traffic from GPT, from some of these LLMs, right? To see like, okay, are we touching all of these different places? So look, at the end of the day, your search traffic might be down, but how is it showing up other places? How is your pipeline impacted? Like, are they still finding your content? Like just as I had a conversation just yesterday where we had built a blog post that had a bunch of like AI prompts for lawyers that actually drove a form fill. That person came from GPT. So we're able to track some of that to see how it's impacting and where it's coming from. So again, we can still measure. It's just challenging and different.
And you can publish content in so many different places nowadays. You can publish it on your site. You can hope it gets consumed there. You can hope perhaps that content gets consumed on some AI search engine. Maybe you can choose to publish it on Reddit, or perhaps even actually try and build your authority by publishing elsewhere. So there's so many different options you have in terms of publishing that piece of content. I guess you still want that piece of content to be unique for that platform that you publish it on. So how do you actually decide where to publish a particular piece of content?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's understanding where your audience is. I can't tell you how many times when I worked at my agency that I had clients who were like, well, we want to be on Facebook. We're spending time there. And I'm like, your customers are not looking for accounting software on Facebook. That is not where they are. But why don't we create some content for LinkedIn, right? Like there's an opportunity to have a LinkedIn newsletter, or we could do some ads or whatever it might be. We could get your founder publishing there because that's where the audience is. And so I think that's important, right? It's always understanding, where your audience is looking. I'm going to go back to this because I bring it up every year and I make fun of myself for bringing it up every year. But like, there are very specific communities that people hang out in. And, I say that like there's Slack channels. Like at my last company, we were working with a lot of like e-com brands and targeting e-com brand. I can't tell you like how many Slack channels there are with like e-com leaders in chatting, right? And they're sharing content and they're sharing things they did. Now being in the legal space, how many legal like forums and places that people are talking. So again, you have to really do the research to see where people are. And then it's just engaging. If you get into something like that, it's a little bit different. You can't just go spam people with your content. But if it's valuable, it's a great place to have it. Someone then shares it and now it's getting picked up.
And when you're writing that content and you've obviously come up with your ideal customer profile, do you actually try to be specific within the content that this content is for them? Or do you just subtly write in a way that is probably likely to appeal to that particular age range or type of person?
I really think it's important to write specifically to them. And that's something that I think my opinion has maybe changed on over the years. Is I used to be more of okay, we can write something that's maybe a little bit more general. But I think because of these changes, that's really important. Just the other day, maybe a week or so, whatever, just recently, this time all blends together. We wrote a piece of content and it was very specific, right? It's an in-house counsel's guide to AI compliance. Like That is a very specific target audience. That is a very specific piece. We're same thing. Like I mentioned that like legal prompts, like it's a guide for in-house counsel for AI legal prompts. Like those are very specific things. And I just think that has become so much more important. And that means you have to understand who are the different people in that ICP. So going back to our original conversation, there might be multiple personas, right? And they care about the same things, but you may now have to write specifically to them.
Casie, what's the key takeaway from the tip you shared today?
The key takeaway is that search is inherently changed, and the content, that broad content we used to write, is not going to work anymore. Understanding your ICP, going to that second level of questions, that next level, and going deeper of what isn't being answered in the AI overviews by GPT, that's going to be the key to your success.
Casie Gillette is a Senior Director of Member and Sponsor Marketing at The Suite. Find out more over at thesuite.com. Casie, thanks so much for being part of SEO in 2026.
Thank you. Thanks for adding me to your list of 114 people.
Counting and counting. I've been your host, David Bain. Get your copy of SEO in 2026, the book, over at SEOin2026.com.